Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I bid to our lecturer Dr. Mahmud and my fellow classmates. My name is Siti Nabila and I will present The Road to Makkah by Muhammad Asad. There are four aspects of the book that I would like to explain. The first is what sparked his interest in Islam. Second, what are his thoughts on the Western society. Third, the condition of the Muslim world. And four, parts of his adventures that are written in the book. The first point is what sparked his interest towards Islam is the fact that there is a harmony between the physical and the spiritual part of the human being. He first saw the congregational movement that is in the Jama'ah prayer in the desert, and at first he thought it was weird because religion is supposed to be something that is in heart, so the mechanical movement made him ponder. So he asked the tribal chieftain, and the chieftain generously explained the significance of all the movements, so he understood. And then he liked the fact that there is an incorporation of Islam in all spheres of life, which shows that everything that human beings do are not considered trivial, such as in politics, economics, or social. Everything is governed by Islam. And the fact that material desires are not just allowed but also encouraged, as long as it is governed by moral consciousness. And lastly, the notion that human beings are born pure and the choices that he makes will affect him as a human being, as opposed to Christianity's notion of the original sin, and also the continuous reincarnation process that is believed by the Hindus. Moving on is the point to what made him really decide to embrace Islam. Is one day he was on the train with his wife Elsa, and he could see that the faces of the well-fed and well-dressed people on the train have the sign of sadness and grief on them, and that made him question about it. And then when he got back home, the Quran which he was reading was open, and when he looked at it, it shows Surah At-Takathur, whereby the verse 3 to 8, which is right here. When he read it, he knew for sure that it cannot be something that a man wrote. It must be divinely guided, because no matter wise a man, he could never have predicted to such accuracy of the disease that traps mankind in the future like that. Now we are moving on to the thoughts that he had on the Western society, regarding the Western society. First is about Judaism. That there were discrepancies in their notion of God. He did not agree with the fact that God should be tribe-centered. And because there is lack of spirituality in the religious rituals, there is no heart and soul poured in the ritual itself. Only the practice is made compulsory, because he understood that in arts there are this innermost unconscious of man that should be contained in art. So he wanted to pursue arts. However, his teachers were too absorbed in learning about the form of the arts itself, so it did not help with his quest. So he had to abandon the study of art, and he pursued journalism, which brought him to travel around the world. The second thought that he had on the Western society is that the religion is too much backgrounded from their life, never to interfere with other spheres of life, such as politics or economics. And after the Great War, or the World War I, there was a spiritual vacuum, because there were clashes of opinions between the egoistic religious people who gave themselves the right to define God based on their own governments and comforts, with the youngsters who only believe in solid truth based on scientific experiments and observations. So due to this clash, the religion was kept to be a tradition and is not interpreted further in terms of the spiritual needs of the body. Beside the backgrounded religion, the Western society were overly dependent on material gains, so much so that the values which they used to judge their actions were based on whether it is profitable to them or not. So it is judged from a materialistic point of view. And he compared the never-ending material aim as running towards a mirage in the desert. Every time they get to a certain objective, to a certain aim, the mirage is gone and they had to make a better and newer aim. So it's like a never-ending vicious cycle in the life of the Western society. Okay, now moving on to the third part of the presentation is what's happening in the Muslim world. Unfortunately, after time have passed, the Muslims we are unable to live up to the teachings, to the true teachings of the Prophet, and slowly, like the Western society, rituals and practices in the religion have become mundane, and the creative power is also washed away. So because the minds and hearts are no longer inspired by the light of Islam. The globalization also made the civilization closer to each other. So we are easily influenced by out the source like the West. This resulted in cultural and moral decay that happened in the Muslim society because the Muslims forsake the perfection of Islam and do not practice it in our daily lives. The next point of the Muslim society is about King Ibn Saud. His name was mentioned almost always throughout the book, so I think it would not do the book justice if I did not include him in my presentation. The name is always related by the people with negative connotations, because sometimes people forget how much trouble and fights and sacrifices he had to go through in order to unite the people of the Saudi Arabia. He conquered Jeddah, Makkah and Medina, and the divided Bedouin tribes, he successfully united them. However, Muhammad Asad did not deny that the fact he did not instill enough knowledge in his people backfired and caused them to turn their backs against him and caused a lot of rebellions to happen in the land. Okay, now moving on to the last part of the presentation, which is his adventures. I'll only explain about two. The first one is he was sent with his companion Zaid to investigate on Adawish men who were enemies of the king. During their investigation, they found out that Adawish and the Ikhwan received help from the British, who was supposed to be the ally of the king. So we can see that the Western power, they aim to build railway across Saudi Arabia and to have a naval base. So they wanted to create chaos, internal chaos between the Arab people. But the king, maintaining his relationship with the British, knowing the importance, he still fought with the rebels and they were defeated. But we have to realize the real intention of the outside power. Under the chapter Jihad, he explained his expedition, or when he joined the Umar al-Mukhtar army to help them under the Grand Sanusi. He was asking himself, why was he doing so? Why was he risking his life to do so? And then he realized it was his responsibility being part of the Muslim community. He said to work for its social fruition within the community of choice. He knew that the people of Umar al-Mukhtar were struggling so bad because they could not leave the children and women who were being attacked by foreign power. So even though they knew the fight, they were small in number and the fight was bound for them to lose, but they still stayed and fought for the Muslim community. From this book, we can understand a European point of view about religion, a very highly intelligent point of view about religion. He questioned his society's tradition and he ended up being a Muslim. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.